Today is Hey Ba'adar Tashin Samic Test. We're learning Rabbi Shab's Chemshik Samic Test, and we're on Ahmed Chof Aleph.
Alright, so we got down to the difference between She'er and Shem and Malchus. We said that in Yonam Echad, that in Mitzad Echad, they're all the same. Shahakir hu b'chinas ha'ola bilvad. U'mikom mochim yesh chiluk beinehem she'inam doimim ze lezeh. Even though they're all ha'olas, but they're not similar, but tachlis one to the other. The oyer hu gilui shenika v'nigla lakoyo. That oyer is a inyan which is a gilui, recognizable and revealed to everybody. In other words, we're talking in that expression, we mean that the actual gilui, how it is to the receivers or observers of the gilui. So it's recognizable to them clearly, and it's revealed to them in the fullest way. Everybody sees the oyer, and everybody is able to recognize the effect of the oyer and observe it as much as it's possible to observe, and automatically they make the kesher with the sun, with the shemesh, and they realize that that's a oyer miya shemesh. However, Shem legabi de makabel mimenu is not by even kozeh. V'Hashem hu helem she'eino nikeh v'nigle gam li atzmei. Now we need to understand what does it mean that Naim is Ainif and Helem, and it's not recognizable and revealed even to the Makabel himself, even to the beneficial or the beneficiary of the Shem. So we have to assume that the Kavanah in Shem here is not just the etzem name which is given to the person, even though that's like the result of it, or the teitzah of it. But the kavanah here is the function of Shem b'negeh to the Adam. And it's well known that the Shem is a kli, it's sometimes called in Siddur, or in other places it's called a mamutza. It's like a medium from the shirish of the neshamas, lamaila, and the chayas of the Adam, begolui, how he lives with the chayas b'teich gufay, b'teich clay gufay. But that mamutza between the two, that's called the Shem. And it's even got Oisias, which is like any name has Oisias. But the day Oisias, Elo, the chayas is nimshu from the makir, atzmi of the chayas, into the guf. And the inif and Shem is essential to the Adam, because if he doesn't have a Shem, then the chayz is not going to be nimshach v'mishpashet b'gufa. And therefore, that's the whole inyan, which is mavur miya b'shem Mezritch Magid, what he said at b'shem Arizal, that it's a nevuah that the parents have when they say the name of the child, the Davki Alidei Oisias Eilu, it'll be nimshich from the makir, the chayas, the makir from the nishamis, it'll be nimshich the chayas into the guf Davki Alidei Oisias Eilu. But the mensch, he's not aware of the fact that Davki his Shem is mamshichim that in an achayah. In other words, all he sees in the Shem is a davar chitzoni bilvad, that he needs the Shem in order to relate to the people around him, in order for certain, what you might call technical necessities, like calling him by his name and having a name for the sake of reference, etc., etc. That's what he understands understands the Inyan Hashem. Aber beemes the Inyan Hashem is nogel etzem chiyusei and to the amshocha the chayis mila maila mea guf el techa hagu. But all of that is betachas hahelim legabi de Adam. He's not magish that he doesn't realize. He doesn't realize he's an afkamina yesh bein shem zeh or Hashem zeh. All he knows is that from kindwise he knew that was his name. The father, he becomes this poor b'shem zeh. What is his name? But he's not aware of the fact that that name is nageh to his chayas and how it's nageh, beis even it's nageh. And the faradini from Shem is betachas hahelim, the one who's mekabel, the beneficiary of the Shem, not aware of the fact that that is ad kedikach nageh to him, and he's not aware how it's nageh to him, but even mahusi, how it's nimshach. He doesn't even know what the Mokia and the Neshama is and the Mokia Chayes is. He doesn't know what, he wouldn't know what you're talking about if you said to him the Mokia Chayes B'chulu Ein Lo Kol Musig, how Erizais is Poel such a Amshocha Ve'ilu Le'idoch. It's a tremendously important Amshocha to him because Bli Amshocha Zeh Ein Lo Chay. And like we were Mavaya in one of the previous classes, the mensch has the name even before it's called, and the Inyan of the Kriyas Hashem is only a Inyan Shul Gilui. For the sake of, we said for the sake of Inyonim Bein Olam L'Chaverei, even though there's a Bavadai enough Kimina once they call him by name, how the Chayas is Nimshach B'tei Gufay, and the even Chayas is different before the calling of the name and after the calling of the name. Kimavur B'sotan Drushek Sidit. It's written Mafurit. That after they call the Tinoik Bishmoy, then the Even Achayas is Naila Yoser than it was before. Oh, but he doesn't feel that. Bishlava Hu, Bavadayu Lo Magish it. And the Mensch Beklau, not Magish all those in Yonim Beneger Lishmoy. The only slight taste that a Mensch has, that maybe the Inyan Hashem is really Nogeh to him, be Mahusei, is that when he's not aware somebody's going to call his name, or he's in a state where he's unattention to a certain point or group or whatever, it should be, and all of a sudden somebody shouts his name, get to him a shocker when he hears his name, and the Sritimon, and he says, oh yes, who does? He answers to the Kriyas Hashem, but that's indicatory somewhat that it has something to do with Mahusei Hapinimiyas. Aber chutz mizeh ain't co-indication to the mensch. And like we once said, if somebody were to be Havdil Robinson Crusoe on an island from Yemei Niulov, and he was just to grow up and nobody called him a name, then he wouldn't particularly feel enough kimina b'zeh. He wouldn't go around saying, what's my name and what am I going to call myself? And he might do it out of curiosity or lack of anything to do. Not that he would say that it's Nege'eloi. That's what the Rebbe means, that the Shem is Inyan from Helem, Legabi de Makabu, Ve'enu Nika Ve'nigla Gamli, Achmoy, even to him, his very self, even to the direct beneficiary, V'kol Shechein Lezu, lost how much more the other person, he's too busy worrying about his Inyanim, he doesn't see any kesher, any Inyan between the fact that they call Ploini, Chaim Yankel or whatever they call him, but he doesn't see any enough Kimina, but B'chayei HaProtim from them mensch, and Kilo, Etzlo Zeh Lagamri Mainaf Kimina. From that we see that the Inyan from Shem is very unlike the Inyan from Oyer, because Oyer is Daki, all the Makablim from the Oyer Hashemesh are aware of the Oyer Hashem, they see it, B'tachlis HaGilui, and they even connected from whence it came. So that's the time or the Inyan, the Hevdel HaPoshut between Oyer and Shem. But Tzorich Leima, Sibas Hadova, we have to say that the reason for that, the Sibah meaning like the cause why it's like that, Lefisha Oyer Hu Dovuk Bahamoya, The reason why everybody sees at the inyan van oil when it's nimshik miyamoya, it's nimshik dafke betakles hagiloi. We have to say because it's dovuk paha moya velochein be'etzem mahusei v'inyonei hu inyana hagiloi. Now, what does we have to be misbreinen? Was it a purish bazer? In other words, since ma'or, by definition, means a source of light, even though there may be more in yonim in the ma'or than it's just a source of light. Of Ochaponim, it's a dover moved out what in yoni is be'etzem mahusei bahir. It's lichtig, it hasn't its of ha'inyan of oyer achmi ma'ed, which we call Behiru. And therefore, if something is dovuk in that, but dveikis achmi is like the oil is dovuk in amoya, then the oil gives off giluive oil, because it's dovuk in a source which it's all in and is Behiru lichtikai. And therefore he says that the inyan of oil is inyone being dovuk in the moya, lochen be'etzem mahusei v'inyone hu inyana gilui. In other words, since it's dovuk in a source which is bahir, therefore etzem inyone is light, but light in a way of gilui, and that's nageh in the very etzem mahus of the V'shem hu she'enu dovuk bo ha'etzem, lochen hu bo b'bchinas hilem. He said, Ma'ashekein Shem, we have to say, is not dovuk in the etzem, even though, of course, we have to say that it's not nivdal or mufrad mi'a etzem, because if it was mufrad mi'a etzem, then it wouldn't be anything. We have to say, but it's not openly, and kol muhusi is me'anit vida, the dveikis in the moya, because that dveikis in the oil in the moya is again the very existence of the oil. We pointed out on many occasions, because without the dveikis the oil just doesn't exist. So therefore we have to say that shame avad it needs the moya from whence it comes. It needs its mokor and its moya from whence it comes, but it's not openly dovuk in it. The whole machias at the shame is meniti dveikis in the moya. In other words, that the shem is gone off in a way that inyone is not the etzem mahus etzem mahus machias is not mitzad the dveikis, but mitzad the fact that the mokia has given it off, or it's given it off in an even from helim, not in an even from open gilui. So that already connects us with the concept of oisias or keilim afila. However, the Rebbe says a very fascinating thing. Since it's not dovuk in the etzem, and that dveikis is not its whole metzias, no, its whole metzias is mitzad the etzem, but not dovuk in the etzem, and therefore it comes in a way of helim. It's not necessarily recognizable, not in its etzem dveikis, and also in the gila that it brings. It's not necessarily recognizable. The shem who kamoy b'chinas koyach. We could say that Shem is like the union of koyach. Klolas hefresh bein oyer v'koyach hu shoer dovuk ba'etzem v'koyach hu shenivdal v'nifrad mino etzem akamash kosu b'makim acher. I don't know if anybody remembers, but we had once we learned in the Maimer in Samavov we had it, and we had but you guys wouldn't have been in the show then. We learned the famous Maimer in Tofrei Samach, Chanukah. We learned it in the Shurim, but it was only a few years ago. The Rebbe is Mavaya, the difference between Oya v'Chayas and Koyach. But we've mentioned it in the Shurim. We had it in Samavov. The difference between Oya v'Chayas and Koyach. So we're not interested so much here in Oyer v'Chayas v'Koyach, but we're interested in Oyer and Koyach. What Oyer means illumination or light, and Koyach means a revealed power or revealed capacity like we talk about the koiches of the nefesh. We say there's koich ha-chochma and koich ha-bina, and we say that the midas are also called koich ha-chesed and koich ha-gvura, koich ha-yesod, koich ha-neitach. And so the difference is that something which is b'derech koyach comes from the etzem, but it goes out from the etzem in the form of a separated, as it were, hafrosha, separated giving off, but not revealed giving off, or dovuk, from the etzem. And one of the examples of that is what we call the koyach hazriko, is if you throw a stone into the air. So the stone, by definition, is a thing which goes downwards. It doesn't go upwards. It's a uniform manucha mitzad gravity. And the fact that it flies in the air, that's heipuk tivoy ha'achmi from the stone. So everybody who sees the stone flying in the air, they say, well, there must be some koyach which is lifting that into the air. So if you throw it, so they say, oh, that is the koyach of your hand that is doing that. Oh, but the koyach of your hand is not united with you anymore. It's gone out of you, and it's sitting on the stone and pushing the stone into the air. And according to how much koyach you put into it, that's how long the stone will float through the air. Once that koyach weakens or stops being any more powerful than the power of gravity, then the stone will just drop, or koponim tend to drop klape mata. So that we see then, that here we got a mensch is a mocker of koyach. He's got koyach hatznua inside him. He's given off a gilui, and you can make a connection if you're misbainan and you happen to have been aware of the fact that Pliny threw the stone, and you make a connection in your mind, the Pliny gave off a koyach and that went into the stone and elevated it into the air. But if you didn't happen to see Pliny throw it, you just saw a stone floating through the air, then you would just say, well, something must have made it float through the air. It's not that the whole inyan of that koyach which went out from the mensch is dovuk boy v'betachas hadveikes itoy uvli the dveikes itoy. It can't possibly do anything or be any metzias beklal. It's a metzias chutz mea, that koyach is a metzias chutz mea etzem, which means that it's not dovuk boy from golu in the etzem, even though sof it is necessary to be say that it has a kesher with the etzem, because it came from that etzem. But it's not dovuk boy. And if says the Rebbe, that's the inyan from koyach. Now it's the same with the koyachs of the nefesh. The koyachs of the nefesh go out from the nefesh, even that they become like a entity michutz la nefesh. The nefesh gives forth seichel. When you get seichel, you don't really know where it came from. It sort of came out almost like a zrika, into your mind. Oh, yeah, you got. It does come from the koyach hamaskil, and it came from here, it came from there, but it comes in an even of helam. It's not clear. A chochma may ayin timotzei. There, the chochma comes from what is virtually ayin. And if the same with the inyan chesed and the other inyanim, they come even from havdora mia etzem, not even from oya. And the inyan from chayis klolius of the nefesh, well, that's b'derech oya. That's b'derech oya min a nefesh. Or the other koyches of the nefesh are b'derech koyach, not oya. And the same with the inyan of the creation. We say there's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, one over here, which says, Atoh asisa es shamayim v'es ha'oretz b'koychacha ha'godel. You did it, you made everything with your great koyach. And so the states is the same thing, that the actual divine influence, which becomes yesh min ayin, is also kilu in even from zrika. It's like a dova nivdo for the avish. It's hidden inside the earth, but you don't see it. Begoloi klau. So that's the inyan from koyach. So the Rebbe said maybe we could connect the idea of shame and koyach together, because the inyan from koyach is nivro v'nifrad min ha'etzem, similarly to what we're tying in with the inyan from shame. Shame is similar. V'lochein ha'oyer hagam shehu b'chinas ha'orer. Levad mikol mochim yesh lo shaychus ela etzem. The oyer, even though it's only a ha'orer, it has a direct connection with the etzem. V'hainu shegilui ha'oyer einu b'shvil azulas כי אם הוא בבחינת גילוי העצם. וצייני לא אומר, לא בשביל לפועל דבר מה, כי אם גילוי העצם. ולא שהעצם צורך אלא גילוי. So here says the Rebbe, the emissary inyan van oyer has got a shaykhus ela ha'etzem. Meaning that the emissary gilui van oyer is not shaykh ela zulas or ela makabu, it's shaykh to the etzem. It could be that ultimately speaking the makabu will have something from that. But Kaviyol, the Eibush didn't give off the oyer directly b'shvil the makabu. After he gave off the oyer, then there are certain inyonim we call tzimtzum, we call helem v'oid inyonim, what they eventually bring that the oyer should be shaykh ela zulas. Over the etchim inyan van oyer, by definition, is shaykh ela ma'or shaloi, shaykh el ha'etzem, not shaykh ela makabel. Amir follows the said that the emissary inyan van oyer, by definition, is gilui ha'etzem, not gilui to anybody, not gilui to a makabel, or not gilui to anybody. The way it becomes oyer, which is gilui to a makabel, is only a day that you matamtzim, or you in any way malim, or you morid, the inyan van oyer, derech ishtaushel mesuyemes, then the oyer becomes shy to be a oyer ha-meir ela makabu or ela zula. But the amitis inyan van oyer is megala de etzem. That's all. The amitis inyan van oyer inyan is rak legalas eso etzem. Therefore, the whole inyan van oyer in its very shoyrish is what we call kolo biha moyer, because its whole inyan is only to be megala the moyer. Therefore, it's a rather slightly new idea to a lot of people, therefore hands are appearing in the air, but that's the immediate inyan of oyer. It's already, now, if we take, and therefore that's the difference between the emissary inyan of oyer and the certain masholin that we have for oyer. Well, we have the inyan from oyer HaShemesh, for example. Well, we say that the oyer HaShemesh gives off, for the sake of the mekabel, because we are mekabel from the oyer HaShemesh. So the truth of the matter is that's not exactly the case. You want to persuade me that the Shemesh is floating around in the heavens worrying about you, and it's worrying about if it's being meir ala oretz or not. The Shemesh beklal yesh lo ezeshu shaychus ala oretz or al maz or plunos or stars or noch the inyan of the Shemesh ain't call inyan bezeh. No, the Shemesh gives off light. Kill the Shemesh Megala himself. How does he get down to you? So there's a mogin al Shemesh. Yeah, they call it Shemesh mogin Havaya Elohim. And through that mogin it comes down. It comes down towards us, then undergoes also to different other shinoim, and then it becomes a oil which is shaykh eilecha. Beikawet, if you were to be mekabel that oil exactly how it's made from the shemesh, I'm sorry, Meshach, you wouldn't be walking around, crouching and messing about. You wouldn't even be. You might be a little piece of charred charcoal someplace. Therefore, it comes to us that every ma'or which gives off light is not really concerned with you. If you happen to be recovered from it, I'll tell you what, it's your inyan, or not the inyan of the moya with the oya bi'etcha. And if I said the Rebbe, the emissary inyan from oya is only gilu amoya bilvad. Mashen came a koyach which goes off from the etzem, that you can't say. A koyach which goes off from him is already that he's giving that towards another entity. If he's giving it towards another entity, then he's already somehow or another limiting himself, or he's limiting the Oven Agilui that should appear to another entity, Chutz Mimeno. And that's what he's now masbir. So therefore he said we have to say that Oyer is Giloi loy bishvil lifel dvama, not in order to bring about or to be poel something. Ki kol piula, that's well known, the Klagen says that kol piula is chutz mia etzem, to be poel in something, into how do you call it, achieve something with something, then you got to be busy with the something. Yeah, but Oyer is not busy with any something. Oyer is only busy being megala the more. Ki im gilui etzem, v'lo isha etzem tzorich el gilui. It's not chodila that the etzem needs the gilui. I say, what's the Oyer doing? Its whole in is to be megala the etzem, so that means that the etzem gave off the Oyer because it wants to have a gilui of itself. No, he said that kamlo. Not that the etzem needs the gilui. Ta'ainu sha gilui hu tayer es etzem. No, you might thought, what would it mean to say that the gilui it's not mamish to be poyer is a dover, but maybe it might be tayer, to, how do you call it, describe, or in some way, how do you say tayer, to shape, or to image in some way there, etzem. Tayer is, a description, or, in other words, that the union of the gilui is not lifel reizadova, but it's to literally give off a description and a gilui of the etzem in some way. So he says, Ki'im u'pchinas gilui mina etzem. Its whole union is a gilui mina etzem. Tzayne loima shemia etzem nimshach oeva gilui. In other words, that it's not what you say. Ula tayer etzem, to describe the etzem or to some way reveal it or to give it forth, then that tends to imply that you're aiming at something michutz la'etzem. Albeit you're not aiming to be poel mashu b'zeh, you're just describing it to you, you're just giving forth a description of the etzem. But why would there be a tayer as a etzem? Well, that already implies a gilui alei zadova. And the Rebbe says we can't even say, in other words, that is like what we might call a kasol chadaitach. That you might think that Einach Hanami the Oyer is not lifel as a door, or but maybe it's tayer as a etzem, which doesn't mean pu'ula, but on the other hand it means a form of gilui, to something. So therefore he said, no. Berega, what you say that, then it means that it's not just gilui mina etzem, but it's a gilui of the etzem for some purpose or other, dainu, to describe or to somewhere, indicate itself to some other inyan. Not to be poel, or to indicate itself. And so therefore said the Rebbe, it's not that. Ki'im, what is it, Hu b'chinas gilui mina etzem. It's all in it is gilui from the etzem. Retain eloima shemia etzem nimshach oeva gilui. That from the etzem goes oeva v'gilui. But who's going to be mekabel is not the etzem's inyan b'chlal. The etzem just gives off the and who's going to be mekabel is a much later problem or possibility. And therefore, so what does he mean by the expression gilui mina etzem? So in the he teaches mia etzem nimshach gilui because if I was going to say that it was nimshach l'tayer, then it's not mamish a gilui mina etzem. It's a gilui for something. And therefore, it's not just gilui mina etzem. So therefore, he says the whole universe is only that the etzem gives it for, not that it's giving for something else. And therefore, he said it's a inyan of gilui that the etzem gives off and loyalty. Okay, what the inyan is gilui is a bit problematical because normally we say that gilui means that there's some mekabel mea gilui. What do we mean by erva gilui? Therefore, we have to say that there are two inyanim in gilui. The one inyan is that you're giving off for somebody else, and that's called gilui. And then there's another inyan that the etzem itself reveals itself. In other words, that the etzem itself gives off a gilui, or that's purely from the etzem, not for anything else. Well, that's going to arouse a question, ma chaser le'etzem gilui. Yeah, ma chaser le'etzem gilui. Well, that we'll see as we go along. We have to say that word gilui doesn't mean in the usual term and the usual inclusive type of the word gilui. It doesn't mean. No, the word gilui means that it gives off a revelation meaning of its own self. Just like a moya gives off oil. Similarly, from the etzem is nimshach gilui. But not that it's for any purpose. Yeah? Like we said, the sun doesn't really mean you. It gives off light just because it's what it is. You are later makabel from it. You're makabel through all sorts of inyonim. When Satan says, not the shemesh meant you b'klal. And the same with where is a ma'or, it gives off light. That's all it means. It means just to give off light from the etzem. In the same way, he said here, the etzem gives off from the etzem is nimshak gilui. But once again, gilui of the etzem, not gilui to something else. It's going to be a shayla kilum b'shvil ma. We'll deal with it slightly as we go along. It's a rather, how do you call it, somewhat exploding type of musag. That's the bir amiti b'kol ha'makemis. That oyer, emes of musag of oyer, is only gilui ha'etzem. Ve'ein leze shum inyan chutz mi masha ha'moyer is meir oyer. But so you're going to say, wait a minute, the Eibishter is meir oyer. Yeah, but he has to give off light. The Eibishter is a moyer. So the answer is that the Eibishter is not a moyer. And then when he gives off light, yeah, we have to say that that's also willing. Yeah, as if it's willing, then there must be some kavanah. So it's like we're chasing ourselves around. So the emphasis we're going to say, we have to say that it's willing. It doesn't just happen, anything doesn't just happen by the Eibishter. But on the other hand, when it does happen, only just to be Megala himself.
How if the tachlis of the or is the tzimtzum and the
the tachlis is not the tzimtzum.
But it happens.
The tzimtzum happens, but that's not the tachlis of the earth. That's only a much later stage. That's only after there's been first of all a ha'ora from that oil. And then in that ha'ora you've had Sfiras Adkei, and you had this, you had that, and you had Leisa Rotzen and Ashora Bekoyach, and it was all sorts of other inyonim, mufloim, Yeridas Kominei, and Afilu Tzimtzumim, Od Lifnei Tzimtzum Harish. Yeah, but all sorts of inyonim, and then you get the Tzimtzum Harish. You follow? Oh, but the original oil was for anybody. The original was the etzem gives off gilui of its own self, not to anybody. Gilui here means gilui of its own self. Just like the shemesh gives off light. Doesn't care anybody. Like I tried to explain to you, shemesh doesn't mean you, my son. There's no voice at the end. And the shemesh has to give off light. I want to say has to. That's the way he is. He gives off light. Lamaila, we're not going to be able to say that. Lamaila, we're not going to be able to say that the etzem gives off light just like the shemesh does. And we're going to have to say that it's a willing thing in a way. But on the other hand, it's willing, but it doesn't mean anything. It's willing, but it's only gilui achmoi, as it were, kaviyach.
How aware is the etzem? Is it aware that it's just being...
How aware? There's no aware and there's no how.
Aware.
There's no where.
Awareness. Awareness.
How much awareness?
Remez?
Awareness.
Awareness. Awareness there is for sure. Awareness, that's what we say. It's a willing, it's a willing thing. It's a willing thing, but it doesn't really mean that he's got a rotzen. It's a willing willing thing, but doesn't mean he has a will. And we'll soon see in a minute that it's written in Sifrei Kabbalah, it's put down. We'll see it in a second. It's put down in Kabbalah that there are two inyanim. There's Yechoiles Lahoya or Yechoiles Shalei Lahoya. That the Eibush has got a capacity he could give off light, and he's got equal capacity not to give off light. You follow? So what's he going to do? Now he could do that, or he could do that. In the fact that he gives off light, that's, as it were, a choice. It's sometimes called in Chassidus Bechiras Ha'atzmos. It's like a choice within him to give off Tafke light rather than not give off light. You follow? That's all. Lawyer tell me say. It's not really a rotzen. It's not really that he wants to give off the light. He does not want to not give off light.
Is this light connected to the worlds afterwards, or is this light? Is it connected to the worlds afterwards? Or?
Yeah, later on, the worlds are going to get this light, and particularly when Mashiach comes to take it from Miyad, then we're going to get it. It's not that the Eibishter brought off that light purely because there's going to be a Mashiach and you're going to get the light. You got the idea? At the beginning, he gives us the light purely mitzad, the negation of the negation, not to give off light. What has that got to do with us? That we'll see. So then he goes on to say, what is he? The kasher agilui hu b'shvil eize dovo, when the gilui is for some matter, harizeh gilui b'chavona. We're not saying the word wanting, we're saying purpose, kavana. He's mechavan to something. So he says that when the giving off of the light is for the sake of some other entity that's going to be makabel from that, that's with a purpose. There has to be some sort of preparation within the etzem, lahoya or legalis, to give forth and to reveal. The whole gilu shu, bihachona, eno kemui ha'etzem. Is there anything that you do by way of preparation for the sake of any given receiver, or that's not like the etzem? Because you're appropriating the etzem for the sake of that man, that makabel. That's not the etzem kamoishu going over, nor the etzem kamoishu undergoing all sorts of nuances and what you might call virtual changes almost, not emerson changes, for the sake that receiver should be a receiver. And therefore it's not kemoya etzem. But yochol liyeh lefi oifen ha'etzem. So the Rebbe said, it could be that it will be lefi oifen ha'etzem, but it will not be kemoya etzem. Now that's a tricky one. V'yesh leima, says the Rebbe, shekeinu b'chol hamshocha v'gilui, that in every hamshocha v'gilui, retain leima gam b'pinas koya, shehu lefi oifen ha'etzem. In other words, that any hamshocha v'gilui will be even oya, but that will be a dover, mishni, a dover tof in the oya. But any hamshocha v'gilui given off by the etzem is lefi oifen ha'etzem. The mile of oyer is that lefi oifen ha'etzem is what you might call, part of the deal, but it's also kemoya ha'etzem. Now, what is the taich lefi oifen ha'etzem? What is the taich in that? Now, we'll soon see in a second. He's going to give a dugma But we're going to just have to deal with a very difficult line in the middle here, and then we'll get to the dugma. What do we mean by saying not kemoya etem, but lefi oifan ha'etem? Ein mashin is buer liyio be'inen koyach hatzoy meyach. Or mashi is buer lekamon be'inen arotzen lehavitz. Now mashi is buer liyio be'inen koyach hatzoy meyach, that we already learned. Or mashi is buer lekamon be'inen arotzen lehavitz, that's what a couple of my more in my head of here where we are, is in the l'chayra eno mina tzedek that we should try and get your head into that rotzen lahaves. But we already had over there the inyan from koyach hatzomayach, and you remember that he said that the inyan at a koyach hatzomayach hakloli atzmi was nimshak from the etzim koyach hatzomayach was nimtza ba'aretz, and it was like a gila etzim. And then if you remember, he wrote over there in brackets that Rabbi v'yesh leima shekoyach hatzomayach hu kemoy koyach v'lo yoel, kemoy inyan hakoyach v'lo inyan hoel. The inyan from koyach. So we already had it over there briefly. But then he goes on to say, Aval l'mayla gama koyach hu mi'ayin ha'amor. Oh, there he says that the inyan for the koyach is also mi'ayin ha'amor. V'yesh leima shu gam kein mi'ayin ha'amor. Afal pi שבוודאי אין המויה, how it is by oya compared to how it is by koyach, must be an afkamina. Because he says, eish loim shekoyach v'lo oya. And yet, in other words, he says, it's me'ain ha-moya, even though it's not mamish dovuk ba'etzim b'golui, but since it comes from the koyach ha'atzmi koyach ha'tzameya, then we have to say that yesh b'zeh giluya, that's what he means. It's lefi oifan ha'etzem, and therefore can be described as mi'ain ha-moya. So we have to lefi there. We have to be mechalik in two oifanim how we understand the lashon mi'ain ha-moya, and one of them is only lefi oifan ha'etzem, and the other is yoter kemoya ha'etzem. For example, we say mi'ain ha-moya. The word mi'ain means on the one hand mamish kemoya etzem. On the other hand, it means loyakol. It doesn't mean everything. Yeah, that's what me'ain means. And if we have to say that in the inyan from oya, the me'ain ha-moya is more the inyan. It's doima to kemoya. It's doima to kemoya etzem. And the inyan from me'ain ha-moya in koyach is how we say lo etzem, lo kol etzem. In other words, there's like two nuances. That the ma'ain ha-moya from oyer is more correct to the musag of kemoya etzem. The ila the ma'ain ha-moya from koyach is more like the inyan of shaloi, lo kol etzem. But it's also mi'ain. Because sof it's dovuk in the Eibush. It's just that dveikis is not per golem. And therefore, that's why actually we did learn this minor one, but I don't think with you guys. I'm just trying to think if we did learn it. We once learned the famous minor from Kofei Bekisla, Tofrei Samach, Hanukkah minor. There the Rebbe says that the Oya v'Koyach balance themselves out. That sometimes we refer to divine influences or Oya, and whatever we mean to give out a certain inyan, and sometimes we call it Koyach, and whatever we mean to give out. You never said there's certain inyanim in Koyach which are like Oya, and certain inyanim in Oya which are like Koyach. It just depends, kilo, how you use them, even though they're two separate entities. Because sof they both have in themselves a me'ain ha-moya, but like two different emphases in the me'ain ha-moya. Therefore, the Rebbe, by the inyan from the koyach hatzomayach, he says that's the inyan from ma'ain koyach ha'atzmi, even though it's not mamish mi'ain like we're talking about in the oya. Alaful pekin it is mi'ain. The same thing here. We have to say that the inyan from koyach hatzomayach indicates to me that l'chol ha'poches, even though they're not mamish kemoya edem, but l'chol ha'poches lefi oifan ha'etzem. Yeah, and that's the inyan of the ma'ain ha-moya, which is more shad to adova bilti dovuk than adova ha-adov. So how does that work? So he said, "U'kemoi b'ashpoyas haseichol mi'amashpia elama." He said, when a Rav, he gives over a seichel to a mekabel. Imi yoshu lefi oifen etzem koyach chokmosei, mikol mochim ena kemoi ha'etzem. In other words, a grace of Chacham, he gives over a metzumtzum dike musag to his Talmud, to his Makabel. So now, you say, if that was kemoi ha'etzem, then ochavei to the man, not ochavei, but I mean, he wouldn't be in a easy match with the Makabel, because he wouldn't be able to be Makabel. Right? It would be too much for him, and he would be misbalbel, he would just split apart. Because if your mamish gave kemoya, so he gives him a dover matzumtzam, and that dover matzumtzam is al derech v'dinim from koya. However, this is zicha lefi oifen ha'etzem. In other words, that's obviously a very deep and powerful musag. Why? Because it came from a chacham amiti and chacham gadol. And therefore, it's nika in that dover mitzumtzam, the greatness of the person who was mashpia. And therefore, even though we learn certain things from the Rebbeim, for example, we learn it, and we get them somewhat, and we pick them up in our mitzumtzam tikaseichel v'ka'etzem, at least we realize that it came from God as a man to get etzem koyach chokmosei. Koyach be'etzem from chokmosei. That's revealed in it. That's called lefi oifen ha'etzem. Or if it was mamish kemoy ha'etzem, then you would just completely fall out. I mean, you wouldn't be able to take it. That's what he means. Lefi oifan ha'etzem. Zicha, the etzem reveals itself here in its majesty, but it doesn't reveal itself kemoy. Yeah? And the same here, but again to the inyan from koyach and mamera, the same with Shem. Yeah? It reveals itself enough. The dveikis is sufficient for us to say, oh, yeah, that comes from a tremendously high moer, but it doesn't reveal to us kamoya moer, the whole possibility that it's possible in miyain. And if we have to say, the pictures that we saw earlier in the Maimon the other night, we saw that there's Yin from Atzilas, and we say that the Eretz are Mishlabshim and Atzilas. We wanted to say that on the one hand, they are Ein Seif, because Ein Seif is Pashtuson in Atzilas, although they don't have all the pshitas that it is in the Yerushalayim Eilam. They already have themselves the Sfiras Agenuzes, Neromim Behem, Bechulu. They already have a inyan from loiku kach pshitas, even though that's pshitas lagabe the kelim of its only relative pshitas. Mashikin ayin seifel is pashtusim, that for sure they have that aspect of the moer. They have lefi oifen a moer, aber nicht lefi oifen in the pshitas ador. Of in the etzem koyach to be always mispashet, they do. V'ois ador po with the meaning from koyach. We can say that koyach is not mamish gilui kamoya etzem, or lefi oifen etzem. It is dahainu. It can be nimshach adain ain't safe. That if you take the inyan from koyach afila in the inyan of the creation, how it's mislabish in the nivroim. Yeah, and the Nivroim become each of them separate entities. Over there, they are Nim Shochim Adain Ain't Say. Yeah, and there's a from Lamaila, all the elements, El Yenim, V'chuli, are Adain Ain't Safe Mamish. In other words, that even though they're all limited in individual units or entities, yeah, they can go Adain Safe. Over there, you have to be misboinen to klap the Ain't Safe. You don't see it Pugolo in the Zah. Aber bevadai behelem there is a inyan from Eitzah. Or also the inyan from Mi'ain Hamoy, how it is in the inyan from Koya. That's called Lefi Oifen Hamoy. Aber it's not Kemoy Hamoy. If Kemoy Hamoy, it will be Takas Apshitas as well. And I mean, that's Yesh Lema the beer in the inyan. And the Father says the Rebbe, that's the inyan from Lefi Oifen Etzem Koya Chokmas. Mikol Mokim Ein Kemoy Etzem. Rainu, how would you do is, Lefisha Ashpur, he alidei achonave, the whole Ashpur comes through a preparation on his part, and he has to be mitzamtzim, his seichel for a seichel of the man, amakabu. And Mamela, that's the inyan of Koyach, and that's the inyan of Shem. Akamesh Kosev Mokim Achim. אבל כאשר הגילוי הוא בבחינת גילוי העצם, הרי הוא כמו העצם. If the gilui is only gilui etzem, not for any other entity, and it's not for hachona kaviyachol, then it's gilui etzem bilbad. So now the Rebbe is going to ask another kasha, not the kasha what you guys have asked, or not the kasha what was Meseder in your minds, but that's another kasha, and we have to take it carefully, and gradually hopefully we'll catch up with all the shilas. And if not, so then you have to take some of the kashis with you, the Guru Shlema, take it from Yad Mamish, because it could be the Guru Shlema might chappers before we get to Faran for all the kashiyas. You know the famous word from the Rebbe, the Melech HaMashiach, the Rebbe said one of the sikhs, was in Toshim Mem Zayin or Toshim Mem Chesed, and the Rebbe said that the peoples, but they have kashiyas, he talks about Mashiach all the time, they got kashiyas, Mazetnis and Weisnis and Burs, they got kashiyas after Indian. So the Rebbe said, but you got to get out of the Golas. So the Rebbe said, for the time being, put the kashiyas aside and just get out of the Golas. And the Rebbe said, if the kashiyas are so dear to you, he said, then take the kashiyas with you. But you can go out of the Golas, get out of Golas, take your kashis with you, and then later when you'll be sitting in the Gula Shlema, and Mashiach will be here, and there's a Dainazam in Gila, then you'll be able to answer all that. Or probably won't even bother you anymore, or the kashi again. If I'm here, the same thing here, we got to forget all the kashi. We got to go weiter, we got to be Mekabel, the Gula Shlema. So anyway, says the Rebbe Azai, Ulachoyre, he says, Ulachoyre always leads into a kasha. Zeh shagilui hu loi b'shvil eiza dova, haray zeh shayev rach b'dova shagilui hu b'derech hechreach. When we say that Shamtik is not for any makabel, that's a gilu which is not shy to any makabel, and it's not b'shvil eiza kavana or eiza dova koshehu, then that usually is in a situation where the hechreach just goes off, but the gilui just goes off, but the mamela and but the hechreach. Hechreach means, just by definition, that's the way it is. That particular moya just gives off oil. And mamela, if it's not for any particular Indian, then it's kilu that it has to be that way. And when we say that it starts somehow or another, how do you call it? It's given off by the moya, not just that it happens automatically. Well, then over a reason, why do you want to give it off? He must have in mind some kavana. If I mean the two musagim hafochim semizeh, if I say that it's not for any kavana, I'm going to say, what's it doing there? If it's not for any kavana, it's not for any purpose, and it's not kilu barotzen, what's it doing there? Just by automatic. Haslucher to say a thing like that, but that's a kasha. And the first said the Rebbe, if you say that the kilu is not for anything, then that would tend to imply that it's b'derech hachreya. K'mo yishakoshe moki macha bo'er v'ziv ha-shemesh shebo b'pchinas hachreya mi'a shemesh di'ef sheshaloi yumshach. That we said before that the shemesh doesn't really mean you. It doesn't really mean you, but dafki, because it doesn't have in mind anybody in particular, the shemesh, the oil goes off in the shemesh b'derech hachreya. The shemesh can't not give off light. The shemesh doesn't decide not to give off light. It doesn't decide to give off light. It's just by definition something that gives off light. The light is just there. That's one of the reasons why we said before that the shemesh doesn't really have a kavana to give off light for your sake. It just gives off light by definition, which means that that's a inyan, the ef shashaloyum shach. It must be that way. ובזה שייך לו, אם שהגילו אינו בשביל איזה דובר. Dainu b'kavona. It's not for any purpose, meaning that it's not b'kavona. I'm sorry. Einu b'shura iza dova, dainu b'kavona samoya. It's not with the purpose or the aim or the how do you call it, the purpose of the moya. Miyach shuhu be'akreya. Einu shaykh loima shuhu b'kavona. Ki'im hu b'derach mamayla. Oh, that's the word that we're looking for. Something which is behechreya just occurs by definition. Mamayla, it just happens of its own right. And something just happens of its own right is something that has to happen that way. Because something which is kavana is under the control of the giver, or something which is with a purpose and with an aim, with a rotzen, any word that you like, indicates that he's the balabas. He's up. If we say that it just mamela mimenu, and the siman shehulo, who kilu hulo balabait as a muchrak. It's an amazing idea. How are we going to fit that in there? Lamaila, by saying that the air is eno legalis shum do. It's not legalis shum eno ze ko inin legalis ki maetem. If it wasn't the inin kain, it would appear that it's behechreya. Aval lamaila yadu sheino er v'giloi mito is bavchinas achreya chasper sholem. How possible we say that the air goes off from the Eibishter? If an Eibishter's atzmus in a form of prayer, Ki'im barotzen. It's a willing thing. The Eibishter decides he wants to give off light. If he says barotzen, then it's b'kavona. Dainu b'shvila is a dover. In other words, you're running back into your kasha that if it's b'shvila is a dover, it's b'kavona. Then it's already. It's not mamish gileha. Keep sort of running around in circles. Oh no, sister, we have to sort it out. B'emes torik leima, the klolos inyan ha'oyer, hu rak b'bchinas giloi min ha'etzem, v'loi b'shul eiz kavona. Daharei, ba'atzmus, in the very essence of Hashem, einu shayak loima eiz kavona chasve sholem. Look at these chasve sholems around here. In other words, that the Rebbe is very anxious to avoid a thing like that. To say that the Indians basically kavona. V'agam she'inyan ha'rotzen, gam kein ein ha'shayach loim ha'bat. Hi, wait a minute, you just said it was a gilui barotzen. What's the difference between kavona and rotzen? The Indian from rotzen is also not shayach loim ha'bat. U'mikom ha'chem ha'oimim shak gilui ha'bat. You get away with it with rotzen, let's get away with it with kavana. You say to what? No, Cholila, because to say it's Beni Kavana. And rotzen, you say, oh, Cholila, to say that he's got any rotzen. He doesn't have any rotzen. Yet you say to what? The kilo is barotzen. So somehow or another you manage to live with that. Let's do that with kavana also. So therefore we have to say, what do we mean? We must say that there's some difference. And when we say barotzen, we don't mean barotzen, but we do. So what is it? Hine b'emes eino inyan shagilahu barotzen mamish. It's not that the gila is barotzen mamish. She'ola barotzeinoi lahoiyah. That it went up into the rotzen of the atzmus, to be ma'ir. She'im kein yeshon b'chinas rotzen chaspa. So, you would say the very essence of the atzmus there is a rotzen. Chas v'sholem. Ela kavona b'zeh, she'onu oimrim sha'gilui hu barotzen, hainu sha'gilui ritzoiniyos. He said it's and he called it a willing gilui, but no, it's not barotzen. It's a willing type, ritzoiniyos, of it's not barotzen. Dari b'yachel te'eshalola hoya. Because he could have done the opposite. Since he could have done the opposite, it's a willing gilui. It's not barotzen, but it's not barotzen. It's willing. The kavanah seinu b'zehu she'eino hechreichi chas v'sholom hainu gilui seinu avaloi shayach shom rotzen chas v'sholom. So it's not rotten. In other words, it's retaining, yes, but it's not parot. So the heads are beginning to shake. This is becoming mind-boggling. So the Indian is like this. Maybe we can say, well, al derech hadugma, can give my dugma, the derech. And the Gemara says that there are gimu shutfim ba'adam, gimu shutafim ba'adam, av v'oim v'kodesh baruch. The mother and the father and the Eibishter. And the Ov gives the, he gives the Oda, how do you call it, the bones, or the Lovan, I think it is, they gives the Lovan, he gives all the white parts of the body and all the white corpus, also the Christ and all the, and the Aim gives the Odaim and the Abdumias and all sorts of other Nyonim, does, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matil, Boy Nishom. In other words, like, if you think of it, it's a whole soup plate with bones and yoyach, and all sorts of things in it. The Eibishter puts in it a neshama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu matil beina neshama. So everybody said, wait a minute. If the Eibishter put the neshama, then it's never going to be an order. Ik kom deze de ganze Indian is man if the neshama. That's a derike. The Guvas is a soup plate with bones. I mean, if the Eibishter put the neshama, there wouldn't be anything. The whole week is the neshama. So how can he call the father and the mother shutafim? How can he call them shutafim? You should say, Gimel koyches bottom, something like that. Oh, they give a little bit, and the Eibishter gives the whole ikka. Must the our aim for shutafim? Steht in considers the beer that they had a brera afnit. They could have said, we're not going to have any child. They could have, that's how they can tell. And my middle of Ipalas, they had a brera afnit. And they used the brera afya, therefore they call it shutafim. Oh, but not that they really are, because the ikka is the Eibishter, the whole ikka is the neshuma. And my middle Gampo, so it's all about. Not that the Eibishter really wants. It's not that he really wants to, he's got a rotten in the Atzmus to give off light. No, he had a prayer afnit, he had a prayer not to give off light. Since he had a prayer not to give off light, it's called, and nonetheless he did, it's called a willing thing. In other words, he was shaylo taipa. But not that he really wants it, not that he's got really a rotten. And that's an amazing idea, which is called gili ritzvenius or liberot. So with those wondrous words, we'll leave it as sort of that. We'll leave it to have a good evening and sort it all out. It's a matter of Benegeh to Moshiach, that's what everybody wants of us. Could be you don't have a rotten. Could be the sikhs will not about it. There's certain peoples, they don't seem to get the whole thing, and it's hard for them, and they don't have a rotten for Moshiach. So the whole Indian is you might have a rotten, but don't have a rotten flavor. Don't be sure the whole Indian. Just let yourself in, and sof kosof a rotten your void. Afterwards the rotten will come. The same Kaviyachol Amayla. The Eibishter Kaviyachol let himself into something which is the opposite of what he could have not done. Later, there's in the Indian from the Oires and all the Oires are clearly bad. They reveals itself what he calls a rotzen. Aber mamish b'tech hatzmusay, ein rotzen v'ein kar v'na. Viele Plois v'na maaseh.
How does all this that we said today, how does that fit in with what we said before, that everything was kolel in the Atzmus anyways?
Everything is kolel in the Atzmus?
Yeah, how does that...
What do we mean everything is kolel in the Atzmus?
I don't know, I remember we said in another class that
everything is kolel in the Atzmus means it's kolel in the... Where ha-kolel of the Atzmus? Kolel, nicht mamish b'atzmus.
Oh, like, okay.
All we can say is another master. What we can say is that the pshitas, the Eibishter, being pshitas amitias, and pshitas bilti ko hagbola klau, or that's mechayiv that there can also be pratim. Or not the pratim are there, but it's mechayiv that there can be pratim as well. And so that we might be clear that in what's called the kol yochel. Yeah? You have something to say? And the Indian from kol yochel is similar to that idea. You understand? Mitzad the Kol Yochel, everything can be. Or mitzad the Etzem Inyan, Kamoshahu, we can't say that it's actually a rot. It's only that they can later be Mishkale Arot. So I'll leave you guys to